Hello to all our viewers tuning in to the channel, Mr Twilight, and welcome back to another episode of our series, Nighttime Horror Stories. Today, I'm going to take you through 3 chilling tales about mysterious motels. If you've ever gone on a long road trip, you'll know the feeling of pulling over at a rundown motel by the highway just to get some sleep before continuing your journey the next morning. But sometimes, what you don't know is that behind those worn-out walls may lie terrifying secrets, enough to leave every guest haunted by what they experience inside. So, get ready, because I'm about to begin the first story. And as always, here's a warning. Make sure your heart is strong enough to handle what you're about to hear. The first story, The Knocker at 3 a.m. Our character today is Eric, who was driving to Las Vegas to attend a small business conference. After 6 long hours on the road, exhausted and drained, he decided to pull over and spend the night at an old roadside motel. The flickering neon sign read, "Desert View Motel." It didn't look like much, but Eric figured it would be cheap enough for a quick rest. This motel had a row of rooms facing the parking lot, with nothing but endless desert stretching out behind it. At the front desk, the motel owner looked indifferent. A tired old man in a worn-out t-shirt, barely caring about anything except taking the money. He handed Eric the key to room 9. As Eric stepped inside, he was met with a run-down scene. Peeling wallpaper, a damp, musty smell, a dim yellow bulb barely lighting the room, and an old air conditioner that rattled as if it was on the verge of breaking. Still, he was too tired to care. After a quick shower, he collapsed onto the creaky bed, ready to sleep. Around 1 a.m., Eric was stirred by the sound of wind howling through the window cracks. Every now and then, he heard slow footsteps in the hallway. He assumed it was just other guests moving about, so he tried to fall back asleep. But around 3 a.m., in the dead stillness of the California desert night, as Eric curled up in that old bed inside a forgotten motel, something happened. Knock, knock, knock! There it was, a steady, deliberate knock on his door. At first, Eric thought he might have imagined it. The wind, perhaps. But then again, knock, knock, knock. Louder this time. Who would be knocking on a motel door in the middle of the night? Out here in the middle of nowhere. Heart racing, Eric threw on his jacket and tiptoed toward the door. The door itself was cheap, with a rusty latch barely holding it shut. Carefully, he peeked through the peephole, but saw nothing. The hallway was empty, bathed in the faint, flickering light of the old motel lamps. Relieved, he turned back toward the bed. But suddenly, knock, knock, knock. The knocking returned, faster, harder, more aggressive. Eric's heart pounded in his chest. He stumbled back, hitting the wardrobe behind him. And then, the door began to shake violently, as if someone was slamming into it with force. Terrified, Eric shouted, "Who's there?" There was no reply. Only a faint, echoing laugh drifted through the hallway. The ceiling light above Eric began to flicker violently, the warning sign of a night that would soon become the most terrifying experience of his life. Summoning every ounce of courage, Eric slowly cracked the door open. The hallway was empty, but clear handprints were smeared across the outside of the door. Before he could even catch his breath, a new sound echoed through the motel. The lights flickered again, casting a dim, eerie glow. And in that brief moment of stuttering light, Eric saw it. Something crawling low to the ground. It moved unnaturally, using both hands and feet. Its shape was human, but emaciated. A thin, bony figure dressed in torn rags. But what struck terror into Eric's soul were its wide, animal-like eyes, glowing white, staring at him like a predator stalking its prey. Panicking, Eric slammed the door shut and locked it. From the other side, he heard raspy laughter, followed by the sickening sound of claws scratching across the wood. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound dragged on, long, slow, and unbearable, as if whatever was out there was trying to peel the door apart. Frantically, Eric searched his suitcase for anything to defend himself, but found only a small wooden stick he could wedge against the door. The silence before the storm, and then everything went silent. Eric pressed his ear to the door. No scratching, no footsteps. Cautiously, he stepped back toward the bed, heart pounding like a drum. But suddenly, Siraj! The window behind him burst open. A freezing wind howled into the room, whipping the curtains wildly. As Eric rushed to shut the window, he found himself face to face with the creature from before. Its face was pressed against the glass, hair hanging down over its forehead, leaving only its terrifying white eyes fully exposed. Its mouth stretched into an unnatural grin, revealing jagged, decaying teeth. Eric's heart nearly stopped. He swung the wooden stick, smashing the glass in a desperate attempt to drive the figure away. In an instant, it disappeared into the darkness. Escape from the motel, realizing he couldn't stay another second. Eric grabbed his things and bolted out the door. The motel was eerily silent. The hallway lights flickered dimly, casting long, ominous shadows. The front desk was deserted. Eric sprinted to his car and started the engine. As he glanced into the rearview mirror, his blood turned cold. There, at the far end of the parking lot, stood the figure, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, eyes glaring directly at him. Slowly, it raised one hand, gesturing for Eric to come back. No way. Eric floored the gas pedal, kicking up clouds of desert sand as he sped away into the night. The aftermath. Eric drove for nearly 30 minutes before he reached a gas station. Pale and drenched in sweat, he recounted the horror he'd just escaped. The gas station staff listened with skeptical eyes. One even suggested calling the police. Later, when the authorities accompanied Eric back to the Desert View Motel, the owner dismissed the whole story, annoyed that Eric was causing trouble. He insisted there had been no one like that around. But when the police inspected room 9, they found long scratch marks on the door and cracks on the window glass, undeniable proof that something had happened. Eric wanted nothing more than to leave that cursed place behind. Days later, the memory still haunted him. He believed he had encountered something not entirely human. The second story, the haunted room by the pine forest. Now we move on to the second story. A chilling encounter that took place in the quiet outskirts of America. Charlie, an adventurous travel photographer, was on his way to the Canadian border for a photography assignment. His journey led him along a desolate mountain road surrounded by forested hills. As night fell, after driving for over an hour without seeing a single gas station, Charlie had no choice but to stop when he spotted an old, weathered sign for a roadside motel. An elderly woman with gray, streaked hair and a strained, forced smile greeted him at the front desk. She handed him the key to room 3 and warned him softly, "Don't go outside after midnight. There are wild creatures around here." A chill ran down Charlie's spine, but with no better option, he went up to his room. The room itself was small, with wooden walls that looked decades old. A faint glow came from a dusty table lamp. The window opened directly toward the dense, pitch-black forest behind the motel. There was no TV, no internet, only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Charlie double-checked the lock on his door several times before finally climbing into bed. The door to his room suddenly swung open. Despite the fact he had locked it, a cold gust of wind swept in. Startled, Charlie jumped up and switched on the lamp. And there, in the faint light, stood a woman in a long white dress. Her black hair fell down past her shoulders. Bruises and wounds covered her pale cheeks. Her bloodshot eyes stared at him wildly. She whispered in a broken voice, "Help me, they're chasing Mia." Charlie froze, paralyzed with fear. Before he could even respond, an invisible force yanked the woman backward with terrifying speed, dragging her into the dark hallway. The door slammed shut behind her. Gathering his courage, Charlie ran to the door. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare waiting for him at Pinewood Haven Motel. Near midnight, Charlie was once again awakened, this time by the sound of the wind howling outside. He sat up, his heart sinking. The door to his room was slightly ajar, even though he was certain he had locked it again. As he cautiously stepped toward the door to close it, he glanced down the dark corridor and saw a shadow slip past. Later, as he finally managed to fall asleep once more, the door burst open again. The same bruised young woman appeared in the middle of the room. "Help me," she whispered. Then, as before, she was violently dragged out by an unseen force. Shocked and terrified, Charlie grabbed his flashlight and ran into the hallway, but it was empty. At the end of the hall, he noticed a door leading out into the forest. Beneath it, a dark brown smear of dried blood stretched along the floorboards. Panicked, he rushed down to the front desk to find the elderly woman. But she was nowhere to be found. He knocked on the doors of nearby rooms. One guest opened, groggy and confused, saying they hadn't heard anything. Someone else mentioned hearing arguing coming from room 2. Charlie hurried over, but the door was locked. He knocked repeatedly, but no one answered. Left with no other choice, Charlie returned to his room, heart pounding relentlessly. He wanted to leave immediately, but his car was out of gas, and he was surrounded on all sides by thick, unforgiving forest. There was nowhere to run. Charlie fortified the door as best he could and stayed awake the rest of the night. Around 3 a.m., in the dead of night, a new sound broke the heavy silence. The eerie noise of something heavy being dragged across the wooden floor, right outside Charlie's room. At first, he thought it might be someone moving furniture, but curiosity got the better of him. He leaned in, peeking through the narrow crack in the door. What he saw nearly stopped his heart. A gaunt, hollow-eyed man was dragging the limp body of a young woman in a white dress. A thick trail of blood smeared the wooden floor behind them. As he passed Charlie's door, the man suddenly stopped. Slowly, he lifted his head, and with a twisted, sinister grin, he stared directly into the door crack, as if he knew Charlie was watching. Paralyzed with fear, Charlie clamped his hands over his mouth. Then, in a hoarse, chilling voice, the man rasped, "Be careful with what you see." A guttural laugh escaped his throat as he continued dragging the lifeless girl toward the forest entrance. Charlie rushed to the front desk to report what he had seen. The elderly woman behind the counter went pale. Her hands trembled. You saw them," she whispered in shock. "I'm sorry, that room, terrible things happened there long ago." She explained that years ago, a young couple had stayed in room 3. One night, a faceless killer attacked them. The girl managed to escape briefly, only to be recaptured and dragged into the forest. Police searched for an entire month but never found her body. Since then, rumors had spread. The girl's ghost often appeared, pleading for help. And worse still, the killer's shadow still lurked near the motel, haunting the forest and preying on the lost. Charlie wasted no time. Despite the morning fog and the treacherous mountain roads, he left Pinewood Haven immediately. He was fortunate to encounter a local a few miles away who helped him refuel his car. Charlie never returned to that cursed place. The third story, the strange room 404 at the suburban motel. This terrifying story belongs to Alex, an unlucky young man who had just moved to Texas. Since his new job wasn't stable yet, Alex decided to stay temporarily at a budget-friendly motel near the highway called Sunset Motel. From the outside, the motel looked decent. A 2-story building painted in cream, with a huge sign at the entrance flashing, "Welcome guests." Alex rented room 221 on the second floor. The hallway lights on the second floor kept flickering. Even stranger, the room number on Alex's door mysteriously changed from 201 to 404. Puzzled, Alex thought someone was pulling a prank and loudly warned whoever it was. But no one responded. Frustrated, he went downstairs and asked the receptionist, "Why has my room number changed from 201 to 404? She forced a nervous smile and replied, "That's impossible. You must have been mistaken." But when Alex returned, the black sign with the number 404 was indeed hanging on his door, with what looked like splashes of dark red paint, or blood, below it. Pushing the door open cautiously, he heard static from an old radio inside. Distorted voices whispering incoherently. Turning on the light, Alex froze in horror. In the corner of the room knelt a grotesque figure. A huge man with countless metal spikes and twisted rods embedded deep in his back. The man turned his head, revealing a face with no eyes. Panic gripped Alex. He thought he might have entered the wrong room. Frozen with fear, Alex's legs wouldn't move, as if cemented to the floor. Behind him, the door slammed shut. The monstrous figure crawled toward him, its metal-laden back clanking and creaking horribly. Desperate, Alex grabbed a table lamp and hurled it at the creature. The lamp shattered, but the creature hardly flinched. It paused momentarily, growling in fury. In a frantic bid to survive, Alex backed into the corner, his hand fumbling for the light switch. He flipped it on and off repeatedly. The light shuddered with each press. Each flash of light revealed the creature inching closer, metal spikes quivering with every move. Alex thought it was the end. Suddenly, the light bulb burst. Darkness engulfed the room. No matter how hard Alex pressed the switch, the light wouldn't return. All he could hear was his own frantic breathing and the sickening shuffling sound of the creature closing in. Silence. After what felt like forever, he heard voices outside in the hallway. Alex realized the room door had creaked open, and when he stumbled out, the terrifying figure had vanished. The radio was silent. The room was eerily still. No sign of the monstrous man except for a few deep scratches on the wall. In a panic, Alex banged on the doors of nearby rooms, shouting for help. When the receptionist arrived, she was pale with fear. To Alex's horror, the 404 sign on his door had disappeared. replaced with 201 once again, as if nothing had happened. There was no trace of the horror he had just experienced. The receptionist confessed, this place used to be a hospital. There's an old rumor that room 404 was once an abandoned operating room on the second floor. No one knows why, but sometimes, for some unlucky guests, that room appears again. Alex didn't wait to hear more. He left Sunset Motel that very night, forever haunted by the image of the eyeless monster crawling in the dark and the cursed room 404 that should never have existed. At sunrise, without hesitation, Alex checked out of Sunset Motel, shaken to his core. Later, at a roadside rest stop, he shared his chilling experience with some local residents. You're lucky to have gotten out alive, one of them said gravely. They explained the dark legend behind room 44. Tribals say that room is haunted by the souls of unfortunate patients, victims of unethical medical experiments conducted in the old hospital that once stood on that land. The grotesque figure you saw, that's their pain and suffering given form. No one knew if these stories were true, but for Alex, it was real. The memory of that night, of the eyeless creature crawling toward him in the darkness, would stay with him forever. And so, we've just completed our chilling journey through 3 terrifying stories about mysterious motels. I truly believe that in this world we live in, there are still countless hidden corners, places shrouded in mystery, and motels, those simple overnight stopovers, may just be the perfect hiding spots for strange and sinister forces lurking in the shadows. Have you ever experienced something strange or unexplainable while staying at a motel? If so, I'd love to hear your story. Feel free to share it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to support the channel. This is Mr. Twilight, wishing you a good night. Or, if you happen to be traveling tonight, be extra careful when choosing where to stop and rest. Who knows, at 3 a.m., you might just hear a mysterious knock at your door. Goodbye, and see you in the next horror video.